Welcome. Early morning coffee. I am currently, I don't know, I'm fixated on a few things. Sony, um, which is a company, like a video game company, like they own and design like the PlayStation Network and the PlayStation consoles, like the modern ones, and um, they announced. Let me see if I can unblur this screen a little. Unblur this camera. But they announced that in 2028 there will be no more like physical games you can buy, um, that you can own. So there'll be no more physical games that you can own, which is weird to me. But I also see the usage, I suppose, especially something like a game. I think moving into a digital world, you're gonna have to make first steps like that in order to make bigger steps. And those bigger steps are, you can't just get out and do them because they're a lot more alarming in their nature than just something like removing physical games, physical copy of the game. So you'll have to digitally buy things, um, and supposedly digitally own them, but I don't know how that works. I've had a few like contemplations on that with where that can go. It's it's a lot to think about. I've got a little routine going where I don't hate my job for the time being. It's pretty easy, um, and I still have enough time to just sort of you know participate in my hobbies and study what I like to study, play around with what I like to play around with. And this is the topic that's found me recently. It's really interested me. A non-physical world. Because I think as a human race, we can sort of acknowledge, um, we can acknowledge and learn the depths of our history, our downloaded history into the digital matrix and all the books and things that have survived. Um, and I don't think we can really compare any sort of exact copy of history to this moment. I think for me, though, I like to think about how do I say this? We live in such a thinking world. We live in the world of the mind now. I think before, as history has come to this moment, and technology and electrical screens and digital computation and automation for that matter. We've been kind of gradually going towards this, but now I think I have a little more of a grasp of the the change from the physical world, living in the physical world and exploring the physical world, and then sort of ceasing to explore that. And now we're not stuck, but now we're like forced in this mold of living in the mind, exploring the mind first of all. And I think it's safe to say we've explored Earth pretty well, or so we say. But we mentally tell the public and tell each other that the Earth is explored and we must conquer space now. And to me, when we're held together purely by words about something, there tends to be a breaking point where exploration is like the only thing necessary. It's the only thing that can like show you the truth. And what is, exploration? I'm talking very vast and broadly. I'm not trying to be this precise thing in exploration. I've noticed that a lot of people can't speak or understand metaphors or analogies or a broad sense of descriptions. But I would say that language and thoughts in the mind has been put on a halt. That level of exploration is just put on a halt. When it happened, I don't know. Who decided that? I don't know. I think it's easy and very easy to tell a story nowadays and to control the mental perception, the mental image, the mental perspective. What I mean by that is the physical and mental environment. What you're seeing, and then how your mental perception is perceiving it, and how you're mentally seeing the context of what you're experiencing physically. I'm gonna take a hit of this. There's a quote I have been thinking about often. It's something like, it's a Terence McKenna quote, but he says something. The bigger you build the bonfire, or the bigger you build the fire, the more darkness gets revealed. So the way I understand that, and how I'm thinking and correlating that quote to this topic, is we have a lot of scientific know-hows, experts in fields, access to information and convenience. And I think on some degree, hold on. I think in some degree, that level of convenience and that level of access to the fire, if you will, creates the isolated human in these societies surrounding us and that you find yourself embedded in. It creates like a sort of a rational lie. It's not necessarily irrational or rational, but like in your own mind, you have to rationalize the lie that you're telling yourself. And I think a lot of people are stuck telling lies to themselves and justifying their existences. We have all these machines and screens to sort of cater towards that. And I think when you kind of think about that, the broad aspect of controlling people's mental image and their physical environment, you would want, if you're seeking control as an entity of systems or governments or power of people, or power over people, sorry, you would want to control what they have access to and how they access things and environments and perceptions and thoughts. Because I think what's really interesting about our situation is right now the fence is purely mental. It's like we all have an electric shock collar and there's an invisible fence. And if, maybe we all like sort of work together to take off our shock collars and get out past this invisible fence, we can explore. And I would say we've never had more access to exploration mentally, which I think scares these sort of systems and these government entities. But I also think it kind of works in their favor. It's a contradictive kind of perspective where the average person, I would say, has way more access to information than someone who was alive and thriving in the job market 30 years ago. And it's only gradually changed. I don't like that word. It's only exponentially changed, I'd say. And now we're hitting a sort of momentum of knowing and information and like how much can we access? What are we accessing? And I think to cloud, to make it foggy, to muddy the waters, we have a lot of stupid fucking shit clogging the mental environment and the physical environment, the electrical screen environments. There's so much useless shit. If topics of conversation are almost, I wouldn't say pointless, because it's not pointless to talk to other people. That's a big thing. It's not. You don't have to agree, but it's not pointless, right? But find that the average person nowadays genuinely has nothing really to offer in perspective and conversation about anything. Like no one has any like ability to how do I say this? No one really has the ability to formulate their ideas of their own in their own way, in their own manner. It's become a sort of like an agreement where, say, a word gets thrown around like Trump, Donald Trump, right? That word comes around, those sounds and meanings of that person, right? It gets put into the people's ears, and it's like people just like perk up, and they're like, oh, and they raise their flag, or yep, I agree, yep, hmm I disagree, no, yeah, fuck Trump, exploiter, pervert, pervert, whatever word. So they immediately go towards a reactive state of buzzwords and trigger words. And they sort of, how do I say this? They sort of, on a much less serious level of getting away from politics and getting into like culture and what people occupy their days with and minds with, it becomes, I mean, it's how I describe, the Trump thing, but it's these people are watching sports, they're gambling, they're watching shows about reality TV shows, for people performing for the camera in order to get money or in order to win the best looking date, The Bachelor, or on a game show to win $1 million or whatever. The stakes have to be very high in a very vulnerable way that the individual who participates has to experience. And if no one is vulnerable, no one's going to watch. If there's not some sort of financial gain from their vulnerability, then why the fuck are these people doing it, right? That's kind of the mindset. But that sort of behavior that is being like presented to us on a mass level is creating the mental image, and we're passing it down to generations. People are now creating entire families, entire new generations of people in social settings where all they fucking care about is money and status. Being seen, having an audience always, performing for the gain rather than just expressing themselves because they felt like it. I think the really big problem with what I've been talking about is we're in such a momentous setting that no one can really formulate any sort of organization to talk about this without getting dogmatic, without getting lost in the language, without getting lost in the sides, and a lot of people must pick a side. There's a new wave of culture that's forming, and that's going to get more real, I believe. And it's going to be in the form of more radicalized groups where they're performing, but it's the ultimate performance. Meaning they've convinced themselves in some way that this act, this performative act, whatever it is, will start or begin their career, their financial security. What happens when everyone acts like that? What's left for the rest of us? I would like to think that this sort of happening, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, is just a natural occurrence to the things we create. But I would also definitely consider that the behavior that is happening more and more is it's being curated, it's being created, it's being, there's a path that's being formed, and we're being pushed down that path, pushed down that stream. And I think this performative nature of these people that surround us all is going to lead to more, how do I say, it's going to lead to people paying for the access point so that they can express themselves via the mold that the access point presents itself. Instead of expression, formulating these new access points. Obviously, this can change. Like, we can express ourselves and formulate something new. But when there's such a momentum of a certain behavior, these access points become the weaponized version of like ideology and belief and faith, where you're buying into the access point. And what I mean by the access point is like, I guess I'll talk about this like alcohol. Where's our access points for alcohol? The liquor store, bars, clubs, whatnot, some restaurants. Now, let's say liquor and alcohol got redistributed through one thing, but it held the opportunity of all the things you can do with it, right? You translate that perspective into like a streaming service of shows and movies. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. That is the access point of a certain sort of company that is producing their own shows and movies, and they're buying the rights of previous generations of these shows and movies. And not all of it's free. You have to pay. You buy the access point to buy more movies and access points. It's weird. And that goes back to, the Sony wanting to get away from physical games and completely removing that access, where it's completely digital. When you replace the will and the discovery and exploration of creation and expression from humans and their history, and you replace it with an access point, instead of just like having open ended information and access to just everyday things, human things. When you are really dictating how people are accessing those things, you're forcing the hand of novelty to act, to come forth, and you're also forcing the hand of fear and anger and hatred to come forth, where some people become so fed up that they'll just buy into it. They'll bow their head and they'll go down with them. I would like to think that that's not all of us. If we bow our heads, we just accept this digital and mental prison. There's no hope. There's no hope within that perspective if we allow it. There is hope in the perspective of acting and creating, not allowing these outside entities to dictate what you think about and what you access, how you work, and how you're expressing yourself. I need this stretch. I really do. I need to get up and stretch. It's a lot to think about. Someone has to think about it. Someone has to work on these ideas and bring some sort of awakening to, even if it is on a local level. We must build something grand and combat. There's not hope, but it's getting pretty scary. The waters are pretty muddy. There needs to be more clarity amongst us, amongst the public, whatever you want to call it, amongst individuals.